What we're finding is that hybrid work is actually really good for productivity. PepsiCo did research that found that when given more flexibility and when given a hybrid option, they see a 15% increase in productivity and 31% less absenteeism. And what we're seeing is that this is just a way for companies to keep good employees, offering that flexibility. It's just not really the culture anymore to have that 9 to 5. You have to be in the office every day. You have to have that face time. It's just not the way things are going. But that doesn't necessarily mean that companies are giving up on office spaces.
That's my colleague Alison Rees, Senior Strategist on Insight and editor of our recent Future of Work report. She says hybrid working models are here to stay. But what does that mean for people, brands and businesses? We explore this and more on today's podcast. First off, Alison tells us the hybrid model is very much a global phenomenon.
So the stats are telling us, yes, that hybrid is here to stay. So a recent survey of 163 CEOs, 28% said that they would adopt like a fully hybrid model. And in Brazil, actually 85% of companies plan to do a hybrid model this year. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the future. But for right now, they're going with a hybrid model. It's hard to put the toothpaste back into the tube once you have your employees working on their own schedules and integrating, exercise and multitasking into their day. Like it's hard to get them back in full time. And what we're finding is that hybrid work is actually really good for productivity. PepsiCo did research that found that when given more flexibility and when given a hybrid option, they see a 15% increase in productivity and 31% less absenteeism. And what we're seeing is that this is just a way for companies to keep good employees, offering that flexibility. It's just not really the culture anymore to have that 9 to 5. You have to be in the office every day. You have to have that face time. It's just not the way things are going. But that doesn't necessarily mean that companies are giving up on office spaces. In Asia Pacific, 50% of companies expect to actually expand their physical presence in the long term. And other companies are actually trying to build more like destination offices for their companies. So for their digital nomad employees that want to like have a more vacation feel, they're creating these digital hubs around the world in places like Cape Town, Lisbon, Brisbane, places where they're quite tech secure locations and they're like hubs for industry, but at the same time, they're near the beach or they're near the mountains so that it's an added incentive for employees to come into the office or to maybe come to those places and work for a month or so.
I think also I've seen that quite a lot of hotels and resorts have capitalised on this because people aren't travelling, but they're setting themselves up somewhere for like months at a time in a resort. That also seems to be happening, right? It's kind of like the travel industry's managed to capitalise a bit from having been in lockdown and not made a profit.
Yeah, there's some places all over the world really, but like in the Caribbean, but also like Southern Europe where they're making almost like tax breaks for people to come and stay for a while and work to get, for tourism reasons, but also just to, appeal to those digital nomads and get them to come contribute to the local economy.
So we're joined also by Lisa Yong, our Director of Consumer Tech. I just wanted to come to you next, Lisa, and ask, from a point of view of tech, what do you think consumers want or need in a hybrid work model?
We have been relying on technology through this period of uncertainty, right? And it seems like tech has been this one constant. So long as we can get online, we have Wi-Fi, we're okay, right? So I think tech is this reassuring normalcy in our everyday life. And I think because of that, people have become more receptive to change and more willing to try new tech out. And I think with this whole remote hybrid work being the new normal, people are definitely seeking out optimal solutions to balance this work and life situation that we're in. So we also expect our work gear to go the extra mile, optimize performance features, longer battery life, flexible hybrid use. So we want the convenience of being able to charge multiple devices at the same time, or choose devices that have a longer battery life or have the ability to quickly charge on the go wherever we happen to be. We also want the flexibility of ultra personalizing our work gear to the way we like it, so it's uniquely ours, whether it's a customized setting on your phone or we're also seeing build-it-yourself keyboards or being able to 3D print tech accessories as and when you need it. And then in moving from space to space, we're also seeing the value of privacy going up to be in your personal zone, if you will, away from nosy or noisy people around you, whether you're at home or at work, in the car, any place, any third place for that matter. So I think, new tech accessories like there's this brand called Novito smart speaker that actually beams immersive audio directly into the listener's ears for a private 3D stereo experience without the need for headphones. Or companies that are producing phone chargers that blocks other smart devices around your home or at work, so to prevent eavesdropping on conversations. So you can ensure really, privacy control to the next level.
You're listening to the Create Tomorrow podcast, and we're discussing the future of work. As the lines blur between the home and workplace, what does this mean for office design? And what will working spaces need to feel like to tempt us back for those meaningful collaborative moments? Right now, Lisa Yong is talking with our head of interiors, Gemma Roberti, about how tech can help replicate the human connections we may miss when remote working.
And I think most significantly, we want a close connection with people. To be in the same space, even though we can't be in person together. And we have a new consumer tech report that actually talked about study tube. I don't know if you know of this term, which is, I think it's interesting to me, and it is a thing. This is a genre of YouTube videos where YouTubers review stationery, vlog themselves studying, teach you how to do your work, your schoolwork more efficiently. So it's really targeted at the high school, college students to be more productive and focused. But we also found this example, which is kind of interesting. It's just someone playing a video, shifting things around, no music, no conversation, and you just turn it on. So you have a companion as you work or as you study.
Ah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and I think, I now imagine if it's in a work scenario, what about a hologram of your co-worker buddy sitting right next to you in the future?
Yeah.
You can converse it if you want to. You can work quietly together alongside each other as you do in real life, in person, right? So wouldn't that be wild? I mean, I think that is the ways tech are finding different ways to replicate that connection that we're missing right now, which is quite fascinating.
Actually, that brought to mind that something that I found really interesting that was spurred by the pandemic. It was a video, a homepage basically, that you could have open as one of your tabs as you were working when we're all working from home. And it was recreating the sounds of the office. So you could choose to emphasize the printer, for instance, or someone typing. And it was, at first, you're like, why would I do this? But then you realize that it's quite soothing. It's, there's the buzz in the background, maybe the bubbles of the water cooler. It was really interesting, actually.
I think it's worth talking a little bit about the Great Resignation, Alison, as well, because it seems to me that it's when you're not physically in an office building a culture, which is a lot easier in person, there's less for people to feel loyalty or ties towards a company. And that seems, at least that's my reading of the Great Resignation a little bit. But we've written quite a lot about this. But what effect do you think this is having on this whole
How do you
future of
balance
work?
this flexibility that is now like built into work culture with making your employees feel like they're a part of a team? And also you have to combat bore out, which is, basically that they're kind of going through the motions every day and they're, again, feeling disconnected from their employees. And I write about the Great Resignation in the Future of Work piece that we did. But actually what I think is more the focus is what I call the Great Reset, which has to do with the major undertaking of upskilling that needs to take place over the next really like 8 to 10 years. about 100 million workers, people that work in the retail economy, or maybe they worked in customer service or in food service. Their whole job has changed. It's just completely been flipped on its ear by the pandemic. So those workers will have to be retrained into new roles, but executive level and knowledge workers, like those people will also really have to adapt. So I think that's really one important way of thinking about like keeping keeping employees and employee loyalty is like allowing for that upskilling at your job. So providing education at your job. It's almost as if you're giving that added value to your employees so that they can stay and grow with the company rather than looking for that outside and then moving on. And we see that happening all over the world, really. So in Europe, the Pact for Skills, which is a program that pledges to upskill more than 1.5 million workers. And they've done collaborations with like Nestle and Google and Ford to develop these training programs. But then we also see in the US particularly a push towards more diversity and inclusion with these programs. So Merck and GM is doing a program where they're going to upskill, hire, and promote 1 million Black Americans over the next 10 years. So there's a lot of initiatives with this, but I think that's something really important to think about when we talk about the Great Resignation and the Great Reset is like, how can we reward the existing employees that we have for their loyalty with giving them more education and opportunity at our own companies?
That fits, doesn't it, Alison, with a lot of the big ideas we're talking about for 2024 in terms of sort of push for progress and inclusivity, that actually brands and businesses are going to need to play a major role in all of this going forwards.
Definitely. And I think also, obviously diversity and inclusion is so important, but I think it's also important to think about mental health as well and people with disabilities. Like what we talk about in the report I wrote is like fairness. And I think the word fairness is being thrown around a lot when it comes to talking about the workplace. And so thinking beyond just, race, but also thinking about gender and disabilities and those other aspects of diversity that are really important when we think about the future of work.
So how will the workplace itself shape up in the near future? Let's hear from our head of interiors and workplace design expert, Gemma Roberti.
What we've seen so far have been very reactive responses driven by a sense of emergency and how do we make these places still safe? So, safe space guidance, all the flooring information, dividers, shifting the furniture, throwing away the lockers. But now it's evident that where possible, people feel safe and also motivated enough to go back to the office. There's the latest 2022 State of the Workplace data report by VergeSense. It just came out and it confirms that office use actually increased by 87% globally from Q1 of 2021 to Q1 of 2022. So it's really time for medium to long-term actions. So there's a great opportunity here to design spaces that can draw the people in, that can make them feel welcome, comforted, listened to. This is very key as well. And also spaces that meet the different ways of working that people have developed as they've grown more comfortable in working from home. So the first key product to invest into for these offices is definitely systems, agile systems, movable elements, lightweight structures, furniture that you could say it's almost as agile as the themes that it supports. Choice, giving also empowering the workers with choice on what to do with this furniture is really important. So prioritizing elements that are adaptable, that give them the sense of autonomy as well. So overall, it's systems that help defining the spatial boundaries that can grow or adapt to how the team is also adapting to the ways of working, and redefine almost the spatial boundaries within the office landscape. They can have varying configurations, and also it allows people to do that themselves. Raise the desk, move the shelf, extend the table, and all of that. Secondly, I would also call out welcoming spaces that foster communication and collaboration. So investing in products like sectional sofas, lounge systems that have all the poofs and parts and that can be moved and at need to create cozy corners. Where I'm seeing actually a lot of really beautiful, comfortable, upholstered visitor chairs that help complement these spaces. Again, something that you can really easily move around to join a conversation or instead take a phone call, for instance. Because definitely there's been an increase in the demand for collaborative spaces. Prior to the pandemic, an average of 10% of an office space per floor was collaborative. Today, we're at 25% per floor. And we know that collaboration is, after all, the key motivator to come back in, reconnect with people, do things together, find that spark that it's harder to find over Zoom. And then thirdly, to counterbalance this collaboration, as we said, there's different ways of working. So it's important to create spaces that include areas for focused work, for privacy. As Lisa mentioned earlier, this is really important. Tech can support that, but also product, accessories, elements that help that. Pods and cocoon, of course, they remain very important. And then lastly, something to keep in mind if the workforce is hybrid, it means that they don't have assigned desks anymore. So accessories, storage, this is really important to complement the desk, to give the person, again, that sense of belonging to the space. It's really, really key to draw them back in. Lockers that were thrown out in many offices to make space for social distancing, now they must come back. We learned this lesson in our own office. Basically the lockers disappeared, but now everyone you talk to misses a locker. You just want to have something that it doesn't have to be big, but where you can leave your laptop or, have something that feels like I have my little nest over there. There's a really good quote actually on this from the founder of a consultancy, Ames Design Collective, Caroline. She says that this is the time to break open everything, to extract and distill what is really meaningful to people at work, and design spaces that nurture them. I love the use of the word nurture here. And this is a time of renaissance, she said. And I think that really sums up very well the great opportunity that this is for interior designers, for companies to invest into not necessarily new, just renewed, more relevant office spaces.
You're listening to the Create Tomorrow podcast, and we're looking at the future of work and the need for flexible design. Next, our Head of Consumer Tech, Lisa Yong, explains how tech will need to offer convenience as we adopt more digital nomadic tendencies, and how it will also need to provide the opportunity to collaborate.
With so much of our life in constant motion between work and play, the tech products that we use have become interchangeable in their functionality and usage. So on any given day, we are tethered to at least 4 or 5 different types of devices, right? Whether it's phones or tablets, laptops, smartwatches, earbuds, that all require some form of charging constantly. So people expect battery efficiency and charging speed to improve exponentially because of this, and for all our tech devices that we carry with us. And this sets the stage for improving the wireless charging experience in this new hybrid life. And the wireless charging technology is still maturing, but the market is projected to reach about $35 billion by 2027. So that is quite huge. And in this regard, developments in over-the-air or OTA charging solutions are gaining prominence. So OTA uses radio frequency wave technology that targets radio waves to charge devices without the need for wires or charger contact. And this is applicable to both home and office environments where multiple battery-powered devices can be recharged at the same time. So imagine coming home from a day at work with your devices at critically low battery levels. And the moment you enter your living room in your home, where your OTA system is all set up, ready to go, all your devices start charging wirelessly until they are fully charged. So no more carrying around bulky power adapters, tangled cables, finding the right power cord, especially when you're traveling so much between spaces. So we're seeing a lot of companies like Motorola, Xiaomi, Guru, WeCharge, there's so many, They are some of these main players working on developing these OTA charging solutions, and I think there's more to come. Then the second example that I'd like to share is about connection, which I think we've all kind of felt that is really, really crucial in hybrid work situations. So there are several companies developing holographic technology to enhance the ways in which people work and collaborate over long distances. For those who need to expand beyond the confines of a small display that we have right now for video calls, you can now interact with life-size holograms with simple hand gestures. And this 3D visualization also allows coworkers to collaborate remotely, as well as participate actively as if they are standing face-to-face in the same room. So we're also seeing a lot of examples where life-size meeting screens or booths enable global collaboration to be more natural and fluid. So it's really not just a little person on the screen. It's really the lifestyle representation that is going to carry what connection is moving towards in the future. And you hear about, Google's Project Starline, for example, which is an experimental booth that allows participants to feel like you're there together. And it's due to come out, as I've read, to the market in 2024. So it's just in time, in the near future that we can experience, the technology that is going to be driving a lot of these. And then we also have, tons of research happening at MIT, developing some kind of tensor holography. And it's a new approach, again, to generate these 3D holograms in real time. So what does that all mean in terms of, why is it so important to have these representation of people that you can't be with? Is really coming back to the connection that I talked about earlier on too, right? It's this need to feel like, you're still in this space together. You're still working together, but life-size right now. And you might adopt a digital avatar. You might not look like who you are, but you can project to be someone else too, which I think for the younger generation will be super exciting.
You're listening to Create Tomorrow, the WGSN podcast. Alison Rees, Senior Strategist on Insight, is telling us how brands and businesses are adopting a more flexible approach to the 9-to-5, always-on culture.
It's not necessarily that employees are going to be working less. It's just that they'll be working. It will be more of an output-based economy rather than input-based economy, which is important to think about. There's a lot of tech companies before the pandemic that just had unlimited vacation days. And what they found is that people actually never really used them because they just were too busy. And so I think the culture has changed a little bit. And now managers, from CEO level down are saying to their employees, okay, let's prioritize taking a break. Let's prioritize vacation, get it in the calendar so that we're avoiding burnout. And actually, Gallup said that 69% of employees who felt like their employer cares about their well-being are less likely to look for another job. And so I think this is really important because for a really long time, there would be yoga Fridays or a HIIT class at the end of the day. And that, when you make it just these one-off things, a lot of people can't do that. It doesn't work in their schedule for whatever reason. But instead, if you say, okay, this is the yoga company or the gym, or, we're partnering with Equinox or whatever, this is available to you, or this mental health service is available to you, and you can use it however you want because you're an adult and you can figure out what works for you. I think that's where we really see happening now is that employers are just giving employees the power then to take that into their own hands and really turn off. I also think there's new conversations around boundaries in general. It's perfectly acceptable to not answer an email anymore if it's the weekend or if it's past a certain time of the day. I know for me personally, I don't keep Slack on my phone. I don't keep the Slack app on my phone. That's how I maintain boundaries. And this is perfectly okay to my team, and everybody knows that. So I think there's just the culture has really shifted. So it's not that people are working less. It's just that more mindful of people's time, their employees' time, their employers' time, and just being respectful of those boundaries.
In this new flexible adaptive working model, what kind of spatial environments are we likely to need and desire? Gemma Roberti says we can expect comfort in softness, feel-good colour, and yes, there will be plants.
Definitely, first of all, there's a lot more cross-industry inspiration, if you want. So we've been tracking that for the recent years, that kind of domestication of the office space, borrowing from residential with the touches, the feels, those elements that give more of a welcoming, homely feel to the office. This has been accelerated by the pandemic. And now we're seeing also hospitality being really relevant into bringing touches that, again, almost like give an elevated experience of the office. In terms of aesthetics, indeed, that define the space, softness overall is a key quality. Softness of shapes, whether it's the sofas or the corner of the table, or even in terms of walls and dividers, an overall softness, and softness of colors and tactilities as well. It's come to the forefront, the impact that color has on well-being. So using color to lift a mood, to convey this feel-good experience, to soothe as well is really important. And linked to this and this importance of wellness also, as you mentioned, biophilic design. There's the impact that having contact with greenery has on people's physical and mental well-being is definitely proven. And that's also, again, something that has been accelerated by the pandemic, where the need to connect with the outdoors was really, really paramount. But also what is really interesting, more green-inspired patterns that, again, fractals are really key. There's a mathematical patterns that occur frequently in nature, and they are scientifically proven to have a calming, a soothing effect. So flooring companies are investing a lot of research into applying this, for instance, for airports, for offices. It has a great impact on how people experience the space, first and foremost. And lastly, natural light. I mean, it's interlinked with biophilia. Access to natural light, it has a huge impact on the mood of people and how they feel, and therefore how they work as well, ultimately. So if there's no access to real natural light, then definitely technology is there to empower with mimicking the quality, the warmth, the temperature of sunlight.
It's Create Tomorrow, the WGSN podcast. As we look ahead to the future of work, we asked our Director of Consumer Tech how the metaverse might feature.
For certain industries, yes, definitely. And technologies like AR, VR, holography, like I've mentioned before, telepresence, they've already entered the virtual workspace to power these new forms of interaction and collaborative work. So you also see examples of, tech giants like Meta, Microsoft, Nvidia, Alibaba, Never. So it's a global phenomenon. They are among a growing pool of companies investing and building the enterprise metaverse to improve workflows and experiencing just work virtually. And I think this increasing acceptance of hybrid work will also push the demand even more, especially for industry-specific collaboration spaces. And by that, I mean platforms that make creative content, collaborative tools that help design and product development teams visualize rapid prototyping with simple mockups, for example, but all virtually, or even immersive solutions that are very popular with virtual recruitment and onboarding new staff. That is definitely happening a lot more in South Korea, which is really leading the way in this trend. And I think there are also companies extending their workforce, integrating all these various AR, VR capabilities in many of their training programs, etc. So the possibilities are endless, and it's just the beginning. And I think if the enterprise metaverse could work, it might open up a lot more different ways of, developing the metaverse for the rest of us. So it's going to be quite a crowded playing field. Just watch the space.
That's it for this week's podcast. Thanks so much to my esteemed colleagues, Alison Rees, Gemma Roberti and Lisa Yong. If you're a WGSN subscriber, you can find many reports covering these topics, not least the blockbuster Future of Work report by Alison Rees. And if you want to find out how to subscribe, head over to wgsn.com to find out how you can get access to our service. We're constantly publishing new content focusing on how we can design a brighter, better future for our industries, and these include food and drink, beauty, interiors, fashion, and consumer tech. You can subscribe to the Create Tomorrow podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you like what you've heard, why not give us a rating and review? And that just leaves me to thank our producer, Roland Bodenham, and thank you for listening. Don't work too hard, and we'll see you next time.